They thought Crestwood's cliffs were the perfect place to dispose of the new black girl nobody would miss. But the moment Dante and his cowardly crew threw Zarya into the void, they created a problem far bigger than gravity. They awakened the one woman on Earth who never negotiates with cruelty, her mother. 10 minutes later, Dr. Serena Monroe stepped onto campus like a storm, wearing heels, and every bully learned the same brutal truth. Some mothers don't scream, they silence. Zarya Monroe had been at Crestwood High for less than 3 hours, yet the world had already turned hostile. The late autumn wind brushed against her braids as she stepped into the back field, hoping to catch a quiet moment before her next class. But Crestwood never offered quiet to someone like her, not a black girl new to the hierarchy, not a girl who didn't understand the unspoken power lines running through the campus. Dante Briggs, the 6-foot golden boy of the varsity team, noticed her first. Or rather, he noticed that she hadn't noticed him, a sin in his twisted kingdom. He tossed his football aside and walked toward her with the swagger of someone who had never been told no in his life. "Well, well," he sneered, circling her like she was prey. "Looks like the new girl hasn't learned her place yet." Zarya tightened her grip on her backpack strap. "I'm just trying to get to class," she said softly, hoping logic might work. It didn't. Kai Torres and Mason Veldon flanked Dante almost immediately, forming a triangle around her. Kai smirked as he scanned her from head to toe, his voice dripping with mockery. "What's with the hair? You think this is some kind of fashion show?" Mason added, "Nah, man, listen to her voice. She sounds like she came straight out of some ghetto documentary." Their laughter sliced through the air, loud enough to draw the attention of a few students nearby. Yet those students froze, pretending to scroll their phones, pretending not to care, because interfering with Dante Briggs never ended well for anybody. Zarya's heartbeat quickened. She stepped back instinctively, only to feel her heels scrape against loose soil. That was when she realized exactly where Dante had cornered her. The ground beneath her sloped downward toward the restricted cliff zone. Her breath hitched. Dante grinned wider, now sensing real fear. "Relax," he said, gripping her wrist. "I just want to show you something." Before she could pull away, he yanked her forward aggressively, deliberately dragging her closer to the drop. Zarya's knees trembled as she tried to find balance on the uneven ground. "Stop, please," she whispered, but the wind carried her words away. Kai mimicked her voice in a high-pitched tone. "Stoop, please," he mocked, sending Mason into another round of hysterics. The bullying escalated within seconds, faster than Zarya could process. It wasn't random, she realized. It was ritual, a warning, a display of power meant to stamp out any hope she had of blending in or standing up. Dante's fingers suddenly clamped around her waist, and in one shocking movement, he lifted her off the ground. Gasps erupted from the students watching, yet not a single one stepped forward. Fear rooted them to their spots. Zarya's breath shattered. Her legs kicked in panic. The cliff's shadow stretched beneath her like an open mouth waiting to swallow her whole. "Chill," Dante laughed darkly. "It's just a joke, unless you make me mad." At that exact moment, a teacher walked past Mr. Halden, clipboard in hand. Zarya's eyes lit with desperate hope. "Help, please," she cried. Mr. Halden looked at her, then glanced at Dante, and he kept walking. No words, no interruption, like he'd seen this before, like this was normal. Zarya's last scrap of hope evaporated. Dante adjusted his grip, tightening it as he turned toward the cliff's edge. With no one intervening, Dante carried Zarya directly toward the drop, and the ground beneath them grew dangerously thin. The world tilted violently as Dante tightened his grip on Zarya's waist. His breath reeked of arrogance. His laughter bounced off the cliffside like a sick declaration of dominance. Zarya clawed at his forearm, her fingers trembling with pure terror. "Dante, stop, please," she choked out, but the sentence never finished. With a burst of cruel enthusiasm, Dante swung her forward and released her. Zarya's scream ripped into the open air, raw and terrified, then abruptly fractured as the wind swallowed it whole. Her body plummeted, limbs flailing, braids whipping as gravity yanked her downward. The blue sky spun into a smear above her, the rocky walls streaking past her like jagged blades. Kai gasped. Mason cheered. Dante threw his head back and laughed, a deep, hollow sound that didn't belong to a teenager, but to something far darker. Below, Zaria's descent was brutal and uncontrolled. She clipped a protruding ledge, the stone tearing into her shoulder with a sickening thud, before she rolled onto a narrow outcrop, barely wider than a classroom desk. The impact exploded through her bones. Pain radiated like fire across her ribs, her arms, her legs, but she didn't fall any farther. Her body came to rest on the ledge, broken, shaking but alive. For a long moment, she couldn't breathe. She lay there, chest rising shallowly, vision flickering in and out. Dust filled her mouth. Blood trickled down her forehead. The world above blurred into indistinct shapes. Up on the cliff, Dante wiped his hands as if dusting off a chore. "That," he said smugly, "is how you teach someone respect." Mason burst out laughing. "Dude!" She screamed like a dying squirrel. Dante elbowed him. "Relax. It's just a freak accident now." She slipped. End of story. But Kai didn't laugh. Something tugged at him, fear, guilt, or maybe conscience clawing through the cracks of bravado. Slowly, he stepped toward the edge. "Don't!" Dante snapped. Kai ignored him and leaned over anyway. His breath vanished. Far below, Zaria's leg twitched. Not much. Not enough for a normal person to notice. But just enough for someone looking directly at her. Kai's eyes widened. "Dante, she's moving." Silence stabbed through the group. Mason stopped laughing. Dante stepped forward, grabbed Kai by the collar, and yanked him away from the cliff. "You didn't see anything," Dante hissed, voice sharpened to a blade. His fingers dug into Kai's neck. No one saw anything. Kai swallowed hard, throat clicking. But Dante shoved him backward. "Listen to me. If she's alive, that's your problem, not mine. We walk away, we say nothing, and nobody gets ruined. You get it?" Mason backed Dante up instantly. "Yeah, man. Don't be stupid. We stick to the story." Kai looked over Dante's shoulder at the cliff, jaw trembling. He wanted to argue, but Dante's dead-eyed stare crushed whatever courage he had left. "Fine," he whispered. "Good," Dante said coldly. "Now let's go before someone shows up." The three boys turned away from the cliff, brushing dirt off their clothes like they had simply finished practice. Their footsteps faded into the distance. Below, Zaria lay on her side, chest heaving weakly. The pain blurred into a distant throb as she forced one shaking hand toward her pocket. Her fingers brushed her, phone cracked but still on. A tiny noise buzzed to life. A faint emergency call signal began to flicker. Her thumb trembled as she struggled to press the screen. Above her, the boys disappeared, unaware that Zaria's phone had just sent the first flicker of a call that could expose everything. The north hallway buzzed with the usual after-lunch chaos, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking, students talking too loudly about things that didn't matter. But the moment Dante Briggs walked in, the noise shifted. Not quieter, just tense. People moved aside instinctively, creating a path as if danger traveled with him. Dante strutted down the corridor like he'd just returned from a championship game, not from the back cliffs where he'd thrown a girl off to teach her a lesson. His varsity jacket hung over one shoulder, confidence radiating off him like a toxic aura. Mason kept pace beside him, smirking every few seconds, adrenaline still pumping from what they'd done. But Kai lagged just a bit behind, shoulders stiff, jaw tight, eyes darting around nervously, as if every student could somehow see the guilt stamped across his face. Mason elbowed Kai playfully. "Dude, relax. You look like you committed a crime." Kai glared at him. "Because we did." Dante stopped walking. He turned, slowly, deliberately, until Kai froze under the weight of his stare. The hallway seemed to shrink. Even the air felt dangerous. "First of all," Dante said with a low voice, "nobody committed anything." He stepped closer, forcing Kai against the lockers. "Second, You need to stop acting suspicious. People notice things. Kai swallowed hard. But she moved. What if she's… No. Dante cut him off sharply. No one saw us. No cameras. No teachers who care. No proof. He tapped Kai's chest with 2 fingers. And without proof, we're clean. Understand? Kai hesitated for a second too long. Dante's jaw tightened. Say it. Kai finally nodded. Yeah, we're clean. Mason grinned, slapping Dante's back. That's what I'm talking about. She slipped, right? End of story. Exactly. Dante straightened his jacket, arrogance sliding back into place. We just walk in like nothing happened. If anyone asks, we were here the whole time. Easy. But Dante wasn't as relaxed as he pretended. His fingers kept fidgeting. His eyes darted toward every person who passed. He was performing confidence, not feeling it. Around them, a few students whispered, sensing something off. Dante flashed them a cold smile, daring anyone to question him. They looked away instantly, except one. Standing halfway down the hall, clutching a textbook to his chest, was Noah Ellis, a quiet student known more for blending into the background than speaking to anyone. His eyes were wide, dark, conflicted. And he knew, because he had seen everything. Earlier that afternoon, Noah had been sitting behind the bleachers sketching when he heard Zaria screaming. He had pulled out his phone and recorded the moment Dante threw her off the cliff. His hands shook so violently that part of the video blurred, but the important part, the horrifying part, was clear. Too clear. Now, watching Dante laugh and high-five his friends like he hadn't just attempted murder, Noah's stomach twisted. He wasn't brave. He wasn't a fighter. He had never stood up to anyone at this school. But the image of Zaria's body falling kept replaying behind his eyes, and the sound of her scream lodged itself inside his skull. He had proof, and proof was the one thing Dante couldn't control. Dante's head suddenly turned in Noah's direction. Their eyes met. Noah flinched, gripping his textbook tighter, but Dante merely raised an eyebrow before walking away, unaware of the storm brewing inches from him. As soon as Dante disappeared around the corner, Noah ducked into an empty classroom, breathing hard. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone and replayed the video. Zaria falling, Dante laughing, Kai shouting, "Dude, stop." The thud of Zaria hitting the ledge, it was all there. Noah bit his lip until he tasted iron. He couldn't keep this. He couldn't stay silent. But who would listen? Who could protect him if Dante found out? There was only one person he trusted at Crestwood High. Only one adult who had ever stood up for him when others ignored him. His thumb hovered over the screen, shaking. With a breathless mix of fear and determination, Noah hit send, delivering the video to the only adult he believed might actually do something, and hoping it wouldn't get him killed. Cold stone pressed against Zaria's cheek as consciousness flickered like a dying bulb. The world around her was a blur of jagged rock, swirling dust, and the metallic taste of blood filling her mouth. Every breath burned. Every small movement sent lightning bolts of pain through her body. She wasn't supposed to be alive, not after that fall. Her right leg lay twisted at an unnatural angle, throbbing with a deep, nauseating ache. She tried to move it once, a mistake. The pain shot up her spine and forced a strangled cry from her lips. Her arms trembled as she attempted to push herself upright, but her palms slipped on blood and gravel. Zaria collapsed back onto the rock. Her vision pulsed in and out of focus. The sky above her, little more than a thin slice of blue framed by the cliff walls, seemed impossibly far, like a ceiling she would never reach again. But she was still alive. Barely, painfully, miraculously. Her breaths came in harsh, ragged bursts. Each inhale felt like shards of ice cutting into her lungs. The shock of the fall numbed her body, but panic began creeping in, heavy and suffocating. She was alone. No one knew she was here. "Think, Zaria, think," she whispered, though her voice was little more than a broken rasp. Her hand twitched toward her pocket, fingers numb and unresponsive. She forced them to move, inch by inch. Her fingertips brushed the edge of her phone, cracked from the fall, but not completely shattered. Hope sparked. A weak, fragile hope, but hope nonetheless. With trembling hands, she slid the phone out. The screen flickered violently, a spiderweb of fractures stretching across it. The signal bar at the top blinked erratically. One bar, then none, then one again. "Please, please work," she muttered. Her thumb struggled to press the contact's icon. Her vision blurred again, doubling the image. She blinked hard, forcing her eyes open, forcing her body to keep going. She found the name, Mom. Her thumb hovered over the call button, shaking uncontrollably. Her breathing hitched. A wave of dizziness rolled through her, threatening to drag her back into unconsciousness. "Come on," she whispered, voice trembling. Finally, she pressed it. The phone barely responded, but the call attempted to push through the failing signal. Zarya held the phone to her ear with both hands, as if willing it to connect. One ring. Silence. A flicker in the signal. Another ring. Static. Then a voice. "Zarya?" Her mother's voice, faint through the distortion but unmistakable. Tears gathered instantly in Zarya's eyes. Her throat tightened. She tried to speak, but her voice broke into shallow gasps. "Mom," she croaked. The phone crackled, the signal dropping again. "Zarya, where are you? Talk to me." She tried again, forcing each word past the pain, past the trembling, past the terror closing in on her. "Mom, help." Her voice cracked again. Cliffs. Static swallowed the rest. The call dropped abruptly. Zarya's hand fell, the phone slipping onto the rock beside her. Her body sagged, exhaustion tugging her toward unconsciousness again. She blinked up at the sliver of sky, hoping those 3 words had been enough. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, inside a fortified briefing room where high-ranking officials studied military threat scenarios, Dr. Serena Monroe sat at a long table, listening to an intelligence update. Her phone buzzed once. A normal person might have ignored it. Serena did not. She discreetly checked the screen, a missed call from Zarya. Seconds later, an audio file auto-downloaded, labeled as a failed voice transmission. She tapped it. Static. Breathing. A broken whisper. "Mom, help. Cliffs." The room fell away. The voices of generals and analysts dissolved into irrelevant noise. Serena stood so abruptly, her chair slammed backward into the wall. "Dr. Monroe?" Someone called after her. But she didn't respond. She walked out of the briefing room without a word, already pulling up her GPS signal tracker as her daughter's faint location pinged once, then faded. Her jaw tightened. Zarya needed her, and nothing, not protocol, not distance, not bureaucracy, would stand in her way. Serena sprinted to her vehicle, ignited the engine, and began navigating toward the last flicker of Zarya's signal, unaware that back at Crestwood High, a much darker cover-up was already underway. Principal Edmund Caldwell hated surprises, especially the kind that threatened Crestwood High's spotless reputation. And on this particular afternoon, the school was drowning in whispers. "Have you seen the new girl?" Someone said she never came back from lunch. People saw Dante with her, near the cliffs. No way. Even Dante wouldn't. Rumors multiplied like wildfire, crackling through hallways, cafeteria tables, locker rows. Students glanced around nervously, unsure of what they believed, but certain of one thing. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Inside his office, Principal Caldwell rubbed his temples as Dante Briggs stood before him, arms crossed, jaw clenched in forced innocence. The blinds were half drawn, blocking out the noisy hallway where more and more students crowded to whisper. The tension outside seeped through the door like toxic smoke. Caldwell exhaled sharply. "Dante," he said, "I'm hearing disturbing things. The new girl Zarya Monroe is unaccounted for." Dante kept his expression steady. "She left campus. I saw her walk off. She was fine." Caldwell watched him carefully. Dante's composure was too smooth, too rehearsed, but Caldwell had known the Briggs family for years. Dante's father was a major donor, practically funding half the school's athletic programs. Crestwood High didn't stay afloat because of the truth. It stayed afloat because of people like the Briggs family. So, Caldwell pressed, "You're telling me you had nothing to do with her disappearance?" Dante met his gaze without blinking. "Nothing at all, sir." A lie. Caldwell felt it heavy, ugly, obvious, but acknowledging it would jeopardize his alliances, his funding, and his career. And Principal Caldwell was not about to risk his career for a girl who had been at Crestwood for less than a day. He straightened his tie. "Very well. You may go." And Dante, "Yes, sir? Keep your head down. No unnecessary attention. Understand?" Dante nodded, a flicker of relief crossing his face. Then he slipped out of the office, closing the door behind him. Caldwell let out a slow breath. He should call the police. He should notify district administration. He should initiate a search. He did none of those things. Instead, he turned to his computer and opened the security dashboard. A map of the campus flickered onto the screen, dotted with small camera icons. He clicked on the cluster near the back cliffs, the restricted area where rumors said students had seen Dante and Zarya. A loading circle spun. Then a message popped up. "Access log request pending." Caldwell frowned. Who had submitted a request? He hadn't approved one. With tension creeping up his spine, he opened the log history. There it was. A request to retrieve footage from 12:15 p.m. to 12:45 p.m. submitted by Mr. Halden, a history teacher. Caldwell's pulse quickened. Halden never caused problems. Why now? He clicked delete request. Another confirmation window popped up. "Are you sure you want to remove this log?" "Yes," Caldwell muttered, pressing the key with more force than necessary. The request vanished. No trace. No audit trail. No witness. His hand hovered over the mouse as he switched to the live feed menu. He clicked the cliff cameras again, but instead of video, another strange message appeared. "Footage unavailable. System flagged for override earlier today." Override? By whom? A chill slid down Caldwell's spine. This wasn't just a rumor spiraling out of control. Something bigger was happening. Someone else had already tampered with the cameras before he even logged in. "Who is messing with my system?" he whispered. He didn't have time to investigate further, because behind him, through the crack of the office door, someone had been watching. Rosalind Grant, the school janitor, stood in the hallway holding a mop bucket. She had seen Caldwell delete something from the screen, and Rosalind had been at Crestwood long enough to know when a cover-up was unfolding right in front of her. Her eyes narrowed. If Caldwell wanted to hide the truth, Rosalind would make sure someone found it. With quiet steps and a racing heartbeat, Rosalind followed Caldwell's gestures and choices, determined to discover why the principal was erasing evidence and what really happened to the missing girl no one could find. The black SUV screeched into the Crestwood High parking lot with a force that made several students jump back. The vehicle's tires bit into the pavement, leaving a curved skid mark like a signature of impending wrath. The engine cut off. For a heartbeat, the campus seemed to hold its breath. Then the door opened. Dr. Serena Monroe stepped out, and the temperature of the entire school dropped. She moved with the cold precision of someone trained in high-stakes crisis. Her expression carved from steel, her eyes scanning the campus like a battlefield. She wasn't dressed for intimidation, just slacks and a dark blazer, but something about her presence triggered an instinctive reaction in every student nearby. They parted, not because she asked, because they felt they should. Conversations died mid-sentence. Phones lowered. Backpacks pulled in closer. The students didn't know who she was, but something ancient and primal inside their minds whispered, "Danger. Authority. Do not obstruct her." Serena didn't spare them more than a passing glance. Her focus was razor-sharp, aimed straight ahead at the main building. Her stride was long, urgent, controlled only by the thin thread of discipline keeping her from sprinting. Her daughter's broken voice echoed in her mind. "Mom, help." Every second she wasted was a second too long. A student finally whispered, "Who? Who is that?" Another replied, "I don't know, but she is not someone you mess with." As Serena crossed the courtyard, Her GPS map flickered again on her phone. Last known location: the cliffs behind the school. The reading was faint, dangerously faint, but still there. Her jaw tightened. She reached the front steps, pushed the doors open without slowing, and stormed through the hallway with the effortless authority of someone who didn't care about permission. By the time she reached the main office, Principal Edmund Caldwell was already waiting, having been alerted by terrified students that a woman who looks like Homeland Security mixed with death was coming his way. Caldwell smoothed his tie with trembling fingers. When the door swung open and Serena Monroe stepped inside, his breath caught in his throat. He knew that face. He knew those eyes. And the realization hit him like a blow. 10 years ago, she had interrogated him. Back when he was a suspect in a school district corruption audit, an audit that Serena had been part of. A woman whose questions cut like scalpels, who could read a lie before the speaker even formed the sentence. Caldwell had escaped consequences only because the board interfered, but he had never forgotten the fear of sitting across from her. Now she was standing in his office, and she did not look patient. "Principal Caldwell?" she said, voice low and deceptively calm. Caldwell's skin went pale. "Dr. Monroe. I didn't expect—" "No," Serena cut in, her tone slicing clean through his stuttering. "You didn't." He swallowed hard. He could feel sweat prickling at the base of his neck. 10 years had passed. Yet the same terror resurfaced, as if she had never left. "I received a distress call from my daughter," Serena continued, her gaze sharp enough to pin him in place. "She said, 'Cliffs.' She hasn't answered since." Caldwell tried to steady his breathing. I'm sure there's a misunderstanding. Students exaggerate. You know how rumors—" Serena took one step forward. Caldwell stopped talking. The room felt smaller now, suffocating under her presence. Her eyes were not angry. Anger would have been easier. "No." Serena's eyes carried something far more dangerous. "Purpose. I want access to every camera covering the cliffs," she said. Caldwell froze. His mind raced. She couldn't see that footage because someone else had already tampered with it, and because he had deleted the request logs minutes earlier. He tried to form an excuse. A delay. A diversion. Serena didn't blink. Her voice dropped lower, cutting him open with quiet precision. "Where are the cameras?" The words were neither a question nor a request. They were a warning, the kind only someone like Serena Monroe could deliver and survive. Before Caldwell could lie, the office door creaked, and a trembling student, Noah Ellis, stepped inside, clutching his phone like a lifeline. The second-floor hallway was far quieter than the chaotic corridors below. Only the low hum of computers from the IT room broke the stillness, mixing with the distant echoes of students who still didn't know the truth that a girl had been thrown off a cliff behind their school. Serena Monroe walked briskly, each step echoing with purpose and fear, pressed into the same stride. She had just left Caldwell's office, leaving the principal pale and speechless. Her next move was surveillance footage, GPS triangulation, anything that could lead her to Zaria's exact location. She didn't expect someone to stop her, but halfway down the hall, a shaky voice whispered, "Dr. Monroe?" Serena turned sharply. A thin, timid boy stood frozen near the wall, clutching his phone with both hands like it might explode. His shoulders were tight, his breath trembling. He was pale, sweating, terrified, but not of her, of what he was about to reveal. Serena stepped closer. "Are you Noah Ellis?" Noah flinched. "Yes, ma'am." He swallowed hard, then lifted the phone a few inches toward her. I have something," he stammered. "Something you need to see." Serena didn't speak, but her eyes sharpened, urging him silently to continue. Noah inhaled shakily and opened his photo gallery. His thumb hovered, hesitating for the tiniest second, before he tapped a video file marked with a timestamp that made Serena's blood run cold. 12:22 p.m. earlier that day. The moment Zaria called for help, he handed her the phone. Though his hands trembled so badly, the screen almost slipped from his fingers. Serena caught the device effortlessly, her eyes locked on the display. The video began to play. Zaria's voice echoed across the cliffs, shaky, frightened. Dante's mocking laugh cut through the air. Kai's uneasy plea. Mason's taunts. The scuffle. The lift. The scream. The fall. Then silence. A silence more violent than any sound. Noah couldn't watch. He turned his face away, staring at the floor. I didn't know what to do, he whispered. I thought if I showed anyone else, they'd delete it or blame me or… Serena raised a hand. Noah froze instantly. She wasn't angry with him. She wasn't anything with him. In fact, her expression was unreadable, dead calm. But that calm wasn't comforting. It was terrifying. Her face didn't twist with rage or collapse into panic. It simply hardened, a still surface over an ocean of fury. Noah had never seen an adult look like that. There was something too controlled, too quiet, too precise in her stillness. Noah took a step back without realizing it. Serena finally lowered the phone. She exhaled slow, controlled, weaponized calm. Noah, she said softly, you did the right thing. Those words made his throat tighten with relief, but the fear in her voice, subtle but unmistakable, made his stomach drop. Can you find her? He asked, voice cracking. Serena didn't answer. She handed him back the phone, then took out her own device and dialed a number so quickly it looked like reflex. 911. Emergency services. The line clicked. This is 911. What's your emergency? Serena's voice came out steady, cold enough to freeze bone. This is Dr. Serena Monroe, she said. I'm at Crestwood High. I have video evidence of 3 students throwing my daughter off a cliff. The dispatcher gasped silently. Serena continued without stopping. This is not a missing person case. A Vera. Her eyes narrowed, burning with controlled vengeance. This is an attempted homicide. The hallway seemed to tremble beneath the weight of her words. Noah clutched his backpack straps, heart pounding. He had expected Serena to cry or scream or collapse, but not this. Not a tactical, deadly calm that suggested she had seen horrors far worse and was prepared to face them again. The dispatcher fumbled through the response. Ma'am, we're sending units immediately. Can you stay on the line? No, Serena said. I need to move. Every minute counts. She hung up without waiting for permission. Noah stared at her, wide-eyed. What? What happens now? Serena turned to him slowly, her voice low and razor-sharp. Now I go get my daughter. Serena strode toward the back exit, clutching the video file while outside, emergency sirens began to rise in the distance, signaling that the consequences were finally coming for Crestwood High. The wind howled across the back cliffs of Crestwood High, carrying with it the tang of dirt, pine, and something far heavier fear. The sun, sliding toward late afternoon, cast long shadows across the rocks as emergency vehicles screeched to a stop behind the athletic field. Serena Monroe was the first out. She didn't wait for instructions. She didn't pause to breathe. She marched straight toward the cliff, with the controlled urgency of someone who had spent a lifetime navigating crises far beyond the comprehension of the average person. Behind her, a team of paramedics and rescue technicians hurried to keep pace, rolling equipment crates and rope harnesses over the uneven ground. Dr. Monroe, wait, a rescuer called. But Serena didn't stop. She reached the edge of the cliff and scanned the drop below, her eyes sweeping over jagged stone, brush, and the narrow outcroppings that lined the cliff face. The world narrowed around her. She forced herself to listen to everything. Footsteps behind her. Rosalind Grant, still in her janitor uniform, hurried toward the group with a mix of fear and determination etched across her face. Doctor! Monroe! Rosalind called, breathless. I heard something earlier. Before all this. Serena turned sharply. What did you hear? Rosalind wrung her hands. A scream. I'm sure of it. I told Caldwell something was wrong, but he told me not to worry. Said it was probably students fooling around. He insisted I ignore it. Her voice cracked at the memory. Serena's jaw clenched. anger flaring behind controlled eyes. Caldwell's cover-up was now undeniable, but she couldn't waste anger on him yet. Zarya came first. Everything else could burn later. A rescue technician approached. "Ma'am, we're preparing the descent. We need to identify the approximate location where she fell." Serena gestured toward a disturbed patch of ground footprints, scuff marks, a broken branch. "Here, this is where they threw her." The team surveyed the area, nodding grimly. One of them kneeled, holding a small device near the edge. Depth scan coming through. The cliff drops about 50 feet. Then there's an outcrop. If she hit that, it might have stopped her fall. Serena inhaled, slow and deliberate. "Zarya," she whispered. The technicians secured ropes, hammered anchors into the soil, and clipped harnesses. The metallic clinks echoed across the rocks, amplifying the tension in the air. Every sound felt too loud, too slow, too insufficient. Serena crouched near the edge, leaning dangerously forward, listening, truly listening. The wind rushed upward from the depths, carrying faint echoes, crunching gravel, rustling leaves, the distant hum of rescue radios. But no breathing, no cries, no voice calling Mom. Serena's heart thrashed against her ribs. She's alive. She has to be alive. Her mind replayed Zarya's faint whisper, "Mom, help, cliffs." Rosalind stepped closer, her voice small. "If she's down there, she might be unconscious, or hurt real bad. I'm so sorry, Dr. Monroe. I should have insisted. I should have." Serena raised a hand gently. "Thank you for telling me. You did more than your principal." The rescue leader approached with a grim nod. "We're ready to descend, but we need absolute quiet for a moment. Sometimes victims can signal faintly." Serena didn't have to be told twice. Everyone fell silent. The world shrank to the sound of the wind brushing against stone. Serena closed her eyes, focusing every fiber of her being toward the darkness below. She listened for anything breathing, shifting rocks, a heartbeat in the void. Seconds stretched. The silence thickened. Then a sound, soft, fragile, barely more than a whisper of pain. A whimper. Serena's eyes snapped open. She's alive. Without waiting for confirmation, Serena lunged forward to the cliff's edge, gripping the rocks with white-knuckled urgency. "Get the harness ready," she barked. Now, the rescue team scrambled into motion. As another faint, broken moan drifted upward from the depths, Serena tightened her harness, ready to go down herself if she had to. The fight to reach her daughter had truly begun. The ropes hissed as they slid through the harness clips, taut and trembling under the weight of urgency. Serena Monroe lowered herself over the cliff edge, ignoring the rescue captain's warning to move slowly. Slow was not an option. The wind whipped against her face, cold and sharp, but it barely touched the fire burning beneath her skin. Her daughter was down there, alone, hurt, fighting to stay alive because 3 boys decided she didn't deserve to exist. Serena tightened her grip on the rope and descended faster. "Dr. Monroe, ease up!" one rescuer shouted from above. "You need to watch your speed." "I'm fine," Serena barked back. She wasn't fine. She was a storm held together by sheer force of will. 10 feet, 20, 30. The cliff face loomed in jagged streaks beside her, each crack a reminder of how violently Zarya must have hit on the way down. Serena's chest tightened. What if she had been seconds too late? What if that faint whimper had been her last breath? No. She rejected the thought instantly. Zarya was alive. Serena felt it. Then, "I see her," a rescuer below called out. "She's on the ledge, just another 15 feet. Serena's heart slammed against her ribs. She spotted the outcrop, a brutal slab of stone jutting from the cliff wall, and there, curled on her side, barely conscious, was Zarya. Her clothes were torn, her face streaked with dirt and blood, her leg twisted unnaturally. Serena's breath broke. "Zarya!" she cried, voice cracking despite her iron control. Zarya's eyes fluttered open weakly. She blinked up toward the sound, toward the mother she wasn't sure she'd ever see again. "Mom." The word was a tiny breath, fragile and aching. Serena hit the last stretch of rope, barely waiting for the rescuer beside her to stabilize her position before she dropped onto the ledge. Her knees hit rock, but she didn't feel the pain. She crawled straight to her daughter. "Baby, I'm here," she whispered, cupping Zaria's cheek with shaking fingers. "I'm here." Tears welled in Zaria's eyes, slow, heavy, exhausted tears. "Mom," she gasped out again, her voice splintering. They pushed me." Serena froze. For a moment, her breath simply stopped. The world narrowed to 3 words. They pushed me. The rescue team heard it. The wind heard it. But only Serena felt its full weight, a boulder of rage crashing into her chest. Her expression didn't twist. Her voice didn't rise. Her face didn't break. Instead, she went utterly, terrifyingly still. The kind of stillness that precedes an eruption. "I know," she whispered, brushing Zaria's hair gently, though her jaw trembled with fury. "You're safe now. I've got you." A rescuer knelt beside them. "We need to secure her leg and get her into the harness. Dr. Monroe, we'll take it from here." Serena nodded, but she didn't move away. She held Zaria's hand as the team worked, keeping her daughter awake, steady, comforted. Zaria winced with every shift, every adjustment of straps. Serena whispered calm reassurance, but her eyes had turned into tempered steel. Zaria was lifted first. The ropes tightened. The harness jerked. Her body rose slowly, carefully, toward safety. Serena stayed on the ledge until Zaria reached the top, refusing to climb until she was certain the paramedics had hold of her daughter's stretcher. When Serena finally ascended and stepped back onto solid ground, the world around her seemed too bright, too ordinary compared to the battlefield still raging inside her. The rescue captain turned to her. "She's stable. We're rushing her to the hospital now. She'll be in good hands." Serena nodded once. Then she stood up straight. Her grief crystallized into resolve. "Get her to the hospital," she said quietly. "Don't leave her side." The captain blinked. "And you, Dr. Monroe? Where will you be?" Serena's voice dropped into a cold, lethal whisper. "I have business here." Leaving the rescue team behind, Serena walked toward Crestwood High, ready to confront the boys responsible for her daughter's fall. The moment Serena Monroe pushed open the heavy double doors of the indoor basketball court, the atmosphere shifted like a sudden storm front rolling in. Students packed the bleachers for after-school practice, unaware that the day was about to split open. Sneakers squeaked, a basketball thudded across the floor, laughter echoed, until Serena stepped inside. Silence fell like a command. Every head turned. She walked across the court with the precision of a soldier and the fury of a mother who had reached the end of mercy. Her gaze locked onto 3 figures, lounging near the scorer's table: Dante Briggs, Kai Torres, Mason Veldon, the boys responsible for her daughter's fall. Dante noticed her first. His smirk twitched, then returned in forced bravado. He nudged Mason. "Looks like someone's mom wants to lecture us." Kai swallowed hard, shrinking slightly at the sight of her, but Dante proud. Stupid Dante kept his chin high. Serena stopped exactly 10 feet from them. Her voice, low and lethal, cut through the stunned quiet. "Dante Briggs." Dante stepped forward, wearing the expression of someone who believed he still held power. "If this is about your daughter, I think you should calm down." His smirk sharpened. "You can't prove anything." Serena looked at him for exactly 1 second. Then she raised her phone and pressed play. The video Noah had recorded, grainy but unmistakable, projected onto the silence of the gym like a bomb detonating. Zaria's terrified scream echoed against the walls. Dante's laugh rang through the court. Kai's shaky protest. Mason's taunts. And then, the horrifying moment Dante lifted Zaria. Then the fall. Students gasped. Some screamed. A girl in the front row clapped a hand over her mouth, tears filling her eyes. "No. No way," someone whispered. "Oh my God, he actually—" "What the hell, Dante?" Dante's face drained of color. Kai stumbled backward, gripping his hair. Mason froze, his mask cracking into sheer panic. Serena paused the video at the exact frame where Dante released Zarya over the cliff. The gym was dead silent. Serena's eyes burned into Dante. "Can't prove anything?" Dante opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His hands twitched uselessly at his sides. Serena took a step closer. "You threw my daughter off a cliff," she said, her voice steady, but colder than any threat. "You left her to die, and you thought no one would ever find out?" "That video," Dante stammered, voice collapsing. One of the students shouted from the bleachers, "We saw it! It's you!" Another yelled, "You're going to jail, man!" The noise rose in a tidal wave of outrage. Phones came out. Students recorded everything. Dante spun in circles like a trapped animal, realizing just how fast his world was collapsing. Kai slid down to sit on the floor, hands shaking violently. Mason pressed himself against the wall, muttering "No, no, no" under his breath. Serena didn't flinch. She lifted her phone again, not to play the video, but to dial a number. The sirens outside hadn't yet arrived, but they would, and she would be the reason. She pressed the phone to her ear. "This is Dr. Serena Monroe," she said, loud enough for the entire gym to hear. "I am at Crestwood High. I have video evidence of attempted homicide committed by 3 students. I need officers on campus immediately." The gym erupted again. "Attempted homicide? He's done." "Oh my God, this is real." Dante staggered backward, shaking his head. "This is insane," she slipped. Serena's stare shut him down instantly. "The only thing you're going to say," she said, "is to a judge." Behind her, students parted as the doors slammed open, administrators rushing in, confused and pale. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, closer, unavoidable. Serena lowered her phone. Justice had arrived. As the gym filled with chaos and disbelief, police officers pushed through the doors, ready to take Dante, Kai, and Mason into custody. Word spread faster than wildfire. Within minutes of the confrontation in the gym, the entire campus was pulsing with shock, fury, and disbelief. The video of Zarya being thrown off the cliff, Noah's recording, had already circulated across dozens of group chats. Screens lit up everywhere. Gasps rippled through classrooms. Tears, curses, shouts, and trembling anger filled the halls. And then the students poured outside. By the time Serena stepped out of the gym, Crestwood High's once quiet courtyard had transformed into a storm of raised voices and shaking hands. Hundreds of students gathered, signs scribbled hastily on notebook pages, and torn posters. "Justice for Zarya. No more silence. Hold them accountable," others simply shouted, their voices cracking with emotion. "How could this happen here? They tried to kill her. Dante should be expelled and arrested." Caldwell hid this. He knew something was wrong. The air vibrated with outrage. A group of girls who had never spoken to Zarya were now screaming her name from atop the steps. Several boys from the track team banged on the railing, chanting, "Justice, justice, justice." The noise reverberated off the walls, building into a thunderous roar that even the police radios couldn't drown out. Then the parents arrived. Cars screeched to a halt along the curb as mothers and fathers rushed onto campus. Some had seen the video already. Others were hearing about it for the first time, and their fury erupted the moment they understood. A mother shoved her way through the crowd, pointing at Caldwell. "You let this happen under your watch." Another father shouted, "My kid told you something was wrong, and you ignored it." Caldwell stood near the doors, pale and sweating, flinching at every accusation. He raised his hands weakly. "Please, everyone, listen, this is being investigated. No more lies." A student yelled, "You deleted camera footage." Another shouted. Rosalind stood off to the side, arms crossed, confirming with a firm nod what the students were accusing him of. Whispers turned into a chorus of condemnation. The police, overwhelmed but determined, formed a barrier to hold back the swelling crowd. Their radios buzzed with urgent chatter as they prepared for the next step, removing the suspects from campus. And then, the gym doors opened again. Dante Briggs, Kai Torres, and Mason Veldon were led out in handcuffs, flanked by officers. The moment they appeared, the courtyard exploded. "There they are! You monsters! How could you do that? She could have died. She did almost die." Parents shouted over students. Students shouted over police commands. Phones were raised, recording every second of the boy's downfall. Dante's bravado evaporated. He kept his head down, jaw trembling. Kai sobbed openly. Mason stared blankly ahead, numb with terror. Caldwell looked like a man watching his career burn to ashes. As the officers pushed the boys toward the patrol cars, someone in the crowd started a chant, shaky at first, then rising with force. "For Zaria! For Zaria! For Zaria!" The chant grew louder, louder, until even the officers seemed taken aback by the intensity. The boys were guided into the vehicles as students pounded the air with fists, demanding justice, demanding accountability, demanding change. With sirens blaring and the crowd still roaring, the police cars pulled away, leaving Caldwell standing alone at the center of a school, ready to tear down every lie he had built. The board meeting room was normally used for quiet discussions about budgets, curriculum revisions, and mundane policy updates. But today, it felt like a courtroom. A long table stretched across the center, lined with board members in stiff suits, their faces tense as whispers rippled among them. Papers rustled, pens clicked, and at the front, under the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, stood Edmund Caldwell, a man visibly crumbling. His tie was crooked, his eyes were hollow, sweat clung to his hairline. He was cornered. A board member cleared her throat. "Principal Caldwell, you are being asked, once again, to explain why the school failed to report a missing student and why records show tampering with the security system." Caldwell swallowed hard. I was trying to prevent panic. The students exaggerate things all the time. I had no confirmation anything happened at the cliffs." Another board member slid a folder across the table. "And what about deleting the camera access requests? Are you denying that?" Caldwell's jaw trembled. "Those logs were irrelevant. It was a malfunction." "Stop," a voice interrupted, cold and steady. Heads turned. Dr. Serena Monroe stepped into the room. She moved with the same quiet dominance she carried on the cliffs, controlled, deadly, unwavering. Rosalind Grant followed behind her, clutching a small USB drive like a courtroom exhibit. Caldwell stiffened. His throat bobbed. I don't believe you're authorized to be present." Serena ignored him completely. She addressed the board. "Madam Chair, members of the committee, your principal did more than fail to report a missing child. He actively interfered with evidence that would have saved precious time." The room froze. Serena nodded to Rosalind. Rosalind stepped forward, voice shaking but determined. "I saw him delete the requests. I cleaned this school for 16 years. I know what I saw. He told me to ignore the screams near the cliffs. He told me to stay quiet." Gasps fluttered around the room. Caldwell's face drained of all color. "This is outrageous. She is misinterpreting. I never." Serena cut him off with a single step forward. "You tampered with the camera logs. You tried to bury the truth to protect students who routinely bully others, students whose families fund your programs." One board member slammed her pen down. "Mr. Caldwell, is this true?" Caldwell's lips parted, but no words came. Silence answered for him. Another board member exhaled slowly, disgust clear in his voice. "Principal Caldwell, effective immediately. You are removed from your position. Security will escort you off campus." Caldwell staggered backward, shock contorting his face. "You can't do this. You need me. The school needs me." "The school," the board chair said sharply, "needs honesty, and a leader who protects students, not donors." Two security officers stepped forward. Caldwell's breath quickened. His hands trembled violently as they guided him toward the door. He looked like a building collapsing in slow motion. The moment the doors closed behind him, the room exhaled long, heavy, exhausted. Serena didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She didn't even look satisfied. She simply turned toward the board members. "Thank you," she said quietly. "My daughter is at the hospital. I need to be with her." The board chair nodded. Go. And Dr. Monroe, we're deeply sorry. Serena left without another word. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway, steady, purposeful, unbroken. She pushed through the school doors and headed straight for her car, ready to reach the hospital and hear Zaria's truth in her own fragile voice. The soft beeping of a heart monitor marked the rhythm of Zaria's return to consciousness. Sterile white walls, the faint smell of antiseptic, and the muffled sounds of nurses in the hallway formed the fragile cocoon around her as she blinked awake. Every part of her body ached a deep, pulsing soreness that reminded her she was still alive. Barely, but alive. The first face she saw was her mother's. Serena sat at her bedside, shoulders stiff, eyes shadowed with exhaustion and worry. She hadn't slept. She hadn't left. She didn't intend to. When Zaria's eyes fluttered open, Serena leaned forward instantly, her voice breaking into a mixture of relief and fear. "Baby, you're awake." Zaria swallowed, her throat dry and raw. "Mom?" Serena nodded quickly, brushing a gentle hand over her daughter's forehead. "I'm here. You're safe." A doctor stepped forward from the foot of the bed, his tone soft. "Zaria, you took a very serious fall. You're dehydrated, bruised, and your leg is fractured, but you're stable, and you're healing well." Zaria nodded weakly, though the words drifted past her like fog. Her mind was somewhere else at the cliff, in the air. In that moment she wasn't sure she would ever wake again. Serena saw the shift in her eyes. She recognized it instantly. Fear, trauma, memory sharpened by pain. "Zaria," Serena said, her voice low but steady, "I need you to tell me what happened. Not because you owe me anything, but because I want the truth to come from you, not from anyone else." Zaria inhaled shakily. For a moment, she closed her eyes, her lashes trembling. The doctor quietly stepped back, giving mother and daughter space. Then, voice trembling but determined, she began. "They followed me," Zaria whispered. "Dante, Kai, Mason, they cornered me after lunch. They said horrible things about me, my voice, my skin." Serena's jaw tightened, but she remained still, letting Zaria speak. "They pushed me toward the cliffs. I begged them to stop. They laughed." Her voice cracked. "Dante lifted me. I couldn't stop him." Tears welled in her eyes, rolling down her cheeks as her breathing quickened. "And then he threw me. I felt the air, and then the rock, and I thought I wasn't going to see you again." Serena leaned closer, gripping Zaria's hand tightly. Her voice was soft, but carried the weight of iron. "You survived, you fought, and now you will be the voice that destroys them." Zaria looked up, surprise flickering through her pain. Serena continued, "I've seen the video. I've handed it to the police. The school board removed Caldwell, and those boys were arrested." Zaria blinked, absorbing the information. "So, what happens now?" Serena exhaled. "Now we take this to court. You're not just a victim, Zaria. You are the key witness. Your voice will make sure they never hurt another student again." Zaria felt something shift inside her. A spark. Not anger, not yet, but strength. For the first time since the fall, she nodded with conviction. "I'll tell them everything," she whispered. At the doorway, the doctor returned, clearing his throat gently. "Dr. Monroe, the juvenile court has scheduled a hearing based on the charges filed today. They'll want Zaria's formal statement soon." Serena squeezed her daughter's hand. "We'll be ready." Example. As Zaria rested and gathered her strength, the hospital room grew quiet while across the city, a juvenile courtroom prepared for the most explosive hearing Crestwood had ever seen. The juvenile courtroom buzzed with an uneasy mixture of tension and anticipation. Rows of parents, reporters, and school officials filled the benches, whispering among themselves as the clerk called the case. State of Crestwood versus Dante Briggs, Kai Torres, and Mason Veldon. 3 boys were escorted to the defense table, their wrists free but their expressions hollow. Dante tried to appear composed, jaw locked in stubborn defiance. Kai trembled uncontrollably. Mason stared at the tabletop, eyes red and vacant. At the opposite side sat Serena and Zaria. Zaria, though still recovering, held herself upright in her wheelchair. Her leg was braced, her injuries still visible, and her presence more powerful than any speech. Serena's hand rested over hers in silent support. Judge Whitaker entered with a stern, commanding presence, signaling the court to rise and then sit. Her eyes swept across the room, pausing briefly on Dante. "Let's proceed," she said. The prosecutor began by submitting the key piece of evidence. "Your Honor, Exhibit A, the video recorded by student Noah Ellis." The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the screen flickered to life. The footage played, raw and unfiltered. Zaria's fear, Dante's grip, the cruel laughter, the shove, the fall. A collective gasp rippled across the room. Dante's attorney winced. Even the judge's jaw tightened. When the video ended, the room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by Zaria's controlled breathing. "Miss Monroe," the prosecutor said gently, "would you like to make a statement?" Zaria nodded. Her voice shook at first, but steadied with every word. "They cornered me. They said things that made me feel less than human. I begged them to stop. Dante lifted me, and when I tried to hold onto his jacket, he told me I wasn't worth the effort." A tear slid down her cheek. "They threw me. I didn't slip. I didn't fall by accident. They meant to hurt me." The courtroom held its breath. Then Dante's attorney rose. "Your Honor, my client asserts that the victim lost her balance. Teenager's roughhouse. It was a tragic accident." Judge Whitaker didn't let him finish. "An accident?" she repeated, voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "After seeing that video, you have the audacity to use the word accident?" The attorney wilted instantly. Dante jumped in, desperation cracking through his arrogance. "It wasn't like that. She grabbed me and slipped. I didn't mean." The judge slammed her gavel. "Enough. The court is not interested in fabricated excuses. The evidence is indisputable." Dante collapsed back into his chair, face pale. Judge Whitaker turned solemn. "For the charges of aggravated assault resulting in severe bodily injury, the court finds Dante Briggs, Kai Torres, and Mason Veldon guilty." Gasps echoed. She continued, "You will each receive 1 year of juvenile detention, mandatory counseling and rehabilitation, 200 hours of community service, and a permanent juvenile record indicating violent misconduct." The boys froze as the weight of the sentence crashed over them. Dante's bravado shattered. Kai sobbed openly. Mason covered his face with shaking hands. The judge's voice softened slightly as she addressed Zaria. "Miss Monroe, your courage in recounting the events made today's justice possible. This court commends you." Zaria's eyes glistened, but she nodded with quiet pride. "Court is adjourned." The gavel struck. Outside the courthouse, the doors opened to a crowd gathered behind barricades. Students, parents, community members all cheering as Serena gently pushed Zaria's wheelchair forward. Voices rose. "Justice for Zaria. You're so brave. We stand with you." As Serena squeezed her daughter's hand and guided her through the crowd, they faced the new world waiting beyond the courthouse, one forever changed by Zaria's strength. The courtyard of Crestwood High looked different now. Not physically the same brick pathways, wound between the same trimmed hedges, but something deeper had shifted. An invisible weight had lifted, replaced by a new vigilance, a new awareness, a new responsibility. Where once whispers of cruelty lingered in the corners, conversations now echoed with resolve. At the front entrance, construction crews worked at sunrise, installing state-of-the-art security cameras across the campus. Technicians mounted wide-angle lenses near every blind spot, including the cliffs behind the school, the place where Zaria had almost taken her last breath. A freshly printed banner hung above the administrative wing. Crestwood High Anti-Discrimination Task Force Est. This year, zero tolerance for hate, violence, and silence. The old administration was gone. New leaders, people who didn't value donors over students, who didn't dismiss warning signs, who didn't pretend not to hear screams, took their place. They held meetings with parents, student advocates, and civil rights consultants. Policies changed. Reporting systems were rebuilt. Training sessions were mandatory. Crestwood High was learning. Slowly, imperfectly, but honestly. And in the center of this movement stood Zaria Monroe. She walked through the courtyard with a cane, her pace steady despite the faint limp that remained from the fall. Students parted for her not because of fear, but out of respect. Some nodded at her, others offered quiet smiles. A few approached her shyly to thank her for speaking out, for surviving, for refusing to disappear, for forcing the school to confront what it had ignored for too long. Zaria had become a symbol, not of tragedy, but of resilience. Her name carried weight now in assemblies, in classroom discussions, in student-led initiatives. She spoke on panels about bullying and discrimination, her voice steady even when her hands trembled. She talked about fear, about injustice, about the silence that allows cruelty to grow. And every time she spoke, the room listened, because she knew what it meant to be unheard. Today, Zaria stood under the shade of an oak tree, watching students move between classes. A group of freshmen passed by, whispering excitedly. One of them looked up at her and said, "You're the reason this school feels safer." Zaria blinked, surprised, then smiled a small, quiet smile that carried more strength than any speech. Across the courtyard, Serena stood with members of the new administrative task force, discussing further changes. She caught Zaria's eye. They exchanged a soft nod, one forged from pain, survival, and victory. Zaria breathed in the crisp air. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She wasn't just the girl thrown off a cliff. She had become a voice strong enough to change an entire school. A crowd gathered near the steps as the principal prepared to give a short address. He welcomed Zaria to stand beside him. She didn't hesitate. When the crowd quieted, Zaria stepped forward, the courtyard falling silent for her. Her voice carried across the campus, clear, steady, and unbroken. Justice doesn't have to shout. It just has to arrive at the right moment to remind every cruel heart that silence is not strength. A hush followed. Then applause surged across the courtyard, rolling like thunder not for what had happened, but for what would never be allowed to happen again. And as Zaria stood there, surrounded by a community forever changed, one thing was undeniable. Her story had already reshaped Crestwood High, and it would echo far beyond its walls. And just like that, the boys who thought they ruled Crestwood learned that gravity wasn't the only thing waiting for them at the bottom. Justice was. Zaria survived. The truth surfaced. And Serena Monroe made sure every lie, every cover-up, every cruel intention collapsed under the weight of consequences. So now, I want to hear from you. If you were Serena, what's the first thing you would have said when facing those bullies? Drop your thoughts below. Your voice matters here. And if this story hit you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. More powerful stories are coming, and you won't want to miss what happens next.